whereby the United Nations is directly influencing our state government and our lives and potentially influencing it more. One of the issues is Agenda 21, which is regionalism, and I don't know if you guys have heard of it. I don't want any gotchas, so I'm going to give a very short explanation. Agenda 21 is a kind of a mandate from the United Nations that people move toward planned communities. Specifically within Ohio, it is a mandate that regional governments, like quartering up the state, with non-elected but appointed persons, would pool resources and determine a lot of the functions of local governments, like how to divide up tax money, pooling the resources of Cuyahoga County, Mahoning County, Lake County, Geauga County, Ashtabula County, that kind of thing, and having a say over policy. The other thing that people are concerned about is the Small Arms Treaty, which has hit the news lately, and there's also a question about foreign aid. Whose turn is it? Sorry, I guess yeah. Mr. Mueller, what would you have to say about that? If you need me to repeat any of it, it's basically the UN in general, regionalism, foreign aid, and the Small Arms Treaty.
Well, I was very pleased to get from Chuck a copy of the Agenda 21, and I read it over very carefully, and I'm very much opposed to that. I think that you've hit it right in the head. What it amounts to is they want to take away our standard of life to give it someplace else, and I think that's very wrong. The real truth of the matter is that the third world today, we're just, I mean, I hate to say this, but it's true, there's just too many people on Earth. You know, I was born 67 years ago, and there were 2.2 billion people on Earth, and in 67 years we've gone to 7 billion. What's going to be like when it gets to 10? What's it going to be like when it gets to 12? And we're going to eat this planet alive. The things that we found that were so wonderful about life are going to be ever more difficult. So I guess in one sense, I am in favor of sustainability, but I am not in favor of Agenda 21. I'm not familiar with the Farm Policy Act. I don't know what that one was. The third thing that you asked me had to do with the arms embargoes. I understand that the difficult part is that they're trying to include small handguns, which they believe to be some kind of an effort to prevent people from arming themselves. I don't have a problem with parts of the arms embargo, because I just don't think that every guy that can find a diamond mine someplace and can hire a small group of people and give them, and buy AK-47s has a right to have his own little rebellion periodically. I think there's far too many automatic military weapons in the world, and as long as that legislation stays in the area of preventing the militarization of third world countries, I think that's a good idea. But if it goes beyond that, it's not a good idea.
I am opposed to the principles represented by Agenda 21. I am generally opposed to the proposition, which I think fundamentally underlies Agenda 21, the proposition that a nation state, the United States of America, should, under any circumstances, yield its sovereignty to anyone. We are a sovereign nation, and we should be in a position to, as we have for all of these years, to watch out for our own interests, to act in our own self-interest, to be mindful of the needs of the rest of the world and compassionate as Americans can only be, but surrender our sovereignty? No. And I think that's the principle that underlies all of these aspects of the initiative, whether it's the small arms control and having somebody from the UN building telling us what kind of arms we can and we cannot bear. If we have a problem with a proliferation proliferation of weaponry in the United States of America? If we did, thank you very much. We'll take care of it ourselves if we have to. I would suggest to you that if Great Britain has a problem with a proliferation of weaponry in the British Isles, they are a sovereign nation too. Let them take care of it however they want, and so forth for sovereign nations. To me, it's a question of sovereignty, and that is a very simple question. We should surrender our sovereignty to nobody under any circumstances.
Okay, we're running out of time, so this is one final question. Basically, how would you describe the state of public education in Ohio? It's going to be Senator Percy, just wait for Mr. Mueller to say something. How do you describe the state of our public schools? What do you think can be done to improve them? And what is your position on having the money stay with the state money, stay with the child as in a voucher type program?
Well, that is a plateful right there. Let me start from the general. I think the state of public education in the state of Ohio is improving. It's improving, and it needs more improvement. I think the principal thing we need to get straight when we're talking about public education, and in particular K through 12 is what I'm talking about, is to realize that in the state of Ohio, we spend something like 18 some odd billion dollars on K through 12 education in this state. 18, 19 billion dollars. Now, whether it comes from real estate taxes, or whether it comes from sales taxes, or whether it comes from state taxes, or lottery money, or wherever it comes from, in the final analysis, you know where it's coming from. It's coming from your pockets, okay? So I think the issue is really considerably less a matter of where is that money coming from. It's whether it's your right pocket or your left is of little significance to you. I think what we need to do, and what we're beginning to do in Ohio, and why public education is improving, is we're starting to focus less on that aspect of it and more on the aspect of outcomes for children. The whole concept of education, let's stop thinking about whether we're union members, let's stop thinking about whether we're administrators or teachers or some other aspect of the system. Let's focus on outcomes for children, and that's what we're starting to do, and I think that's the right direction to go. That's why when we passed a bill this spring from the Senate that had the third grade reading guarantee, you perhaps have heard of that, which is essentially guaranteeing that all children in the state of Ohio are going to learn how to read by the third grade, so that they can read to learn for the years after that. And we're going to develop creative and useful and purposeful remedial programs for those kids who don't hit that benchmark, so that they get up to speed where they begin to be. So generally speaking, I feel that education in the state of Ohio is turning in the right direction. My mantra is we need to start focusing on outcomes for children and less focusing on who gets the credit for it and all the other bickering that sometimes accompanies public education.
Did you address vouchers?
No. Time is up.
Time is up.
Both candidates, I believe, will be available after we conclude our meeting tonight out in the back there, so you'll have opportunity to follow up with any other questions you have for them.
Yeah, I think the state of education here in the state is fairly decent. I recently went to a seminar that was put on by a gentleman who's been studying this in depth. And remember I said I'm an engineer and I'm into facts and things like this. You know, you read horrific things in the newspapers about, well, America is now 17th in education in the world. And what his take on this was, and his conclusion was, sadly, if you simply remove the large inner city school districts from the pool, you'll find that America is still number 2 or number 3. And the problem is the inner city schools. And the difficulties there, you know what, I gotta tell you something. Better minds than mine have tried to solve that problem. And it seems to be, in my opinion anyway, it's more a function of, you know, culture and people not valuing education. In communities where there's a high